Good evening. My name is Clemens Sedmak. I teach social ethics at the Keough School, and I'm a fellow of the Nanovic Institute and was asked to introduce this film. So that's what I'm doing. It will take 6 minutes, 20 seconds or something like this. I'm from Austria. Austria is not a prestigious place to come from. It is a small country with less than 9 million inhabitants. It has been reduced to this size after the First World War. Before that, you had the mighty Austro-Hungarian Empire. That is why an important concept to understand Austria is the word nostalgia. The monarchy is still very much alive in architecture, tourism marketing, and even in some Austrian minds. There is something like an Austrian inferiority complex, living so close to the powerful nation of Germany. The well-known Austrian psychiatrist Erwin Ringel published a book on the Austrian soul in 1984. He described the Austrian as obsessed with obedience and shaped by a sense of inferiority. This may be one reason why Austria is so sensitive to external interference and intervention. Tonight's film is from Austria and about Austria. You are going to see a documentary about one aspect of Austrian history, a documentary made by the Austrian Jewish filmmaker Ruth Beckermann. The genre of the film as a documentary about one aspect of Austrian history is not contested. But please do not mistake documentary for objective, neutral, nuanced, impartial, let alone charitable presentation of a topic. Ruth Beckermann's film is an example of what could be called an angry documentary. Her parents were Holocaust survivors, and she was active in political actions to oppose Kurt Waldheim's election campaign when he ran for the largely ceremonial office of President of Austria in 1986. She used material she had produced as a young filmmaker and political activist, and as you will see, she talks about the dual role of documenting and protesting. This angry documentary is well done. It has a clear message, and it keeps the attention of the spectator. It talks about a person, a country, and a time, in this order. A person born in 1918 who was drafted into the German Wehrmacht during World War II. A country that presented itself for many years as the first victim of Nazi Germany. And a time, the mid-1980s, when this myth of victimhood was challenged for the first time. The person and the country and the time came together in a way that led to strong opposition. And this opposition in turn led to counter-reactions, some of which fed into the latent anti-Semitism, which then became open, ugly anti-Semitism. Up to this day, Austria is struggling with hidden and open anti-Semitism. And up to this day, Austria is struggling with populism and the politics of emotions, as the Austrian author Josef Haslinger had called our political culture in 1987, 1 year after Kurt Waldheim was elected. Ruth Beckermann has good reasons to produce an angry documentary. She has to be honest to herself. She offers a personal lens. I have 3 personal connections to this film. First, my father was born in 1921 and was also drafted into the German Wehrmacht. Even though he did not disclose a lot, I have some sense of the complexity he had to navigate during and after the war. Secondly, I was a freshman in high school in 1986 and remember the times as well as the discussions we had in history classes moving slowly from Austria, the Nazi victim, to Austria, the Nazi ally. Third, I'm very good friends with Heinz Nussbaumer, the official spokesperson of Kurt Waldheim during his 6 years as President of Austria. Heinz has given me a bit of background information which I could refer to in a discussion after the film. So let me repeat. This film is what I could call an angry documentary. It is an important film. It is an authentic film. I would not call it a film characterized by fairness. It is a film with a clear message. But clarity is sometimes bought at the price of losing a sense of complexity. John Paul Lederach the well-known peace builder and former professor of peace studies here at Notre Dame, writes in his wonderful book, The Moral Imagination, the moral imagination is characterized by a commitment to complexity, by the ability to sustain a paradoxical curiosity that embraces complexity without reliance on dualistic polarity. End of quote. This is a difficult sentence, but it basically means the moral imagination sees a world beyond the black and white. Later in the book, Lederach writes, peace building is an enormously complex endeavor, in unbelievably complex, dynamic, and more often than not, destructive settings of violence. I had often thought about and suggested that a peace builder must embrace complexity, not ignore or run from it. End of quote. Judging a person's life and judging the past are two complex tasks. The task becomes even more complex when it is about judging a person's past and a person's actions in the past. Stories about human persons are complex. I will give just one example. Let me quote from an article from the New York Times from May 17, 1986, reporting on an interview with Jewish Holocaust survivor Wiesenthal. I quote, Simon Wiesenthal, the Austrian hunter of Nazi war criminals, accused the World Jewish Congress today of stirring anti-Semitic sentiment in his country through its campaign against Kurt Waldheim, the former United Nations Secretary-General and candidate for the Austrian presidency. Mr. Wiesenthal singled out Israel Singer, the Secretary-General of the World Jewish Congress, accusing him of having made threats against Austrians if they voted for Mr. Waldheim. End of quote from the New York Times. Complexity is not the currency of straightforward action. My favorite German word was coined by the Austrian author Robert Musil. It is the word Möglichkeitssinn, sense of possibilities. Musil describes a poet as one who uses this Möglichkeitssinn, this sense that the status quo does not have to have the last word. Let me invite you to watch this film making use of your moral imagination and your Möglichkeitssinn. Thank you.